All right, once again, welcome back to the Counterintelligence Training Center. We did a video yesterday and kind of want to do another one with a similar type of, flow, feel that we had to that one. You guys have watched me do a lot of different pours, a lot of different sample boards, and I really like the idea of Josh doing some of these pours for you guys because he's only been here a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I just want you to see just how well our training process works and how nice of pieces he's able to create so quickly. So once again, I'm going to kind of step back, let Josh take lead on this. You might hear me ask him some questions along the way that I get asked in class a lot. But for the most part, I'm going to let Josh do his thing. Once again, white marble is the most popular thing that we get asked for all the time. This is another interpretation of white marble. This is a way that Josh is actually doing pretty good with these. And so I'm just going to kind of let him do his own thing. He's still going to use our techniques. He's going to talk you through the process. And then you're going to hear me ask him some questions along the way. So stay tuned. Josh, take it away, my friend.
All right. So we're going to start with our liquid white base. Just like we do on all of our Calcuttas, our marbles, we're going to do something heavy. We're going to pour this out. We're going to try and cover everything. Don't be scared to get some to come over the edges, right? We're just trying to get coverage here. Most important thing, like we talk about in all of our videos, we need to get them faces covered, right? So let's get all this out here. Nice flow. And we'll get an idea of what we're going to do once we get all this out here, out in the field. So we know what we're going to do, that we know that we've got coverage on all the faces, and we'll move forward from there. So like we talk about in all our techniques, we've got our double glove going on. I'm a righty instead of a lefty, so you southpaws have to go the other side, but not a big deal. You're going to want to get a feel for this epoxy. If this was a piece that wasn't quite as wide like I've talked about with this counter before, I would come from the middle towards myself, but I get a little nervous about that because I'm going to get my tummy and my shirt in the middle of this mess, then I'm going to disrupt that whole process. So what you're going to want to do is while you pull this through, right, you're going to want to make sure you're getting a good amount of epoxy under your fingers, on the pads of your fingers, right? You don't want to be scooping a big chunk, but you need to be able to move it. There's a lot of different videos out there that you'll see on YouTube. People using little gauge
notch trowels.
Yeah, notch trowels. Thank you, Troy.
Yep.
A lot of different methods. I like personally, I've tried a lot of them, but since I've used our method, I like being able to feel it with my hand a little bit better. I can control a lot more of where I feel like it needs more or less. Are the notch trowels going to give you consistency about how much you're moving back and forth? Sure they are. I mean, that's what they're designed to do. But I like to be able to feel my material. It also gives me an idea of how loose or tight my material is, knowing where I'm at in the process, right? So we're going to go ahead and just get this whole thing pushed out as we move. Paying attention to make sure we get our faces, linear strokes. We're taking our material down the face. We don't want to pull it up the face. We want to push it down the face.
I'm just going to help him out, y'all. Don't mind me.
So again, making sure that we're taking this material with us, right? We want to be nice and even as we spread this out. A lot of times, some people who watch this start with a look at this and say, man, I'm seeing some areas out in here where it almost looks like it dives in, it's a little lighter. You got to remember, epoxy is a self-leveling material. As long as we get a nice, relatively even coat, it's going to take care of the rest for us. It's going to flow out, it's going to cover all those areas, but we got to do our part. Always remember, we're going to harp on it every single video we do a pour. Always remember, them faces is what is going to make or break your job. Somebody comes in here and sees something that's just poured over like this but isn't smoothed over, and we get some tension in there, it's not going to look right. It's not going to look natural. They're going to notice it, and it's going to disrupt whatever beautiful piece of artwork that you did on top of that to bring all of this in as one cohesive piece. All right, so let's make sure we get our faces real good. Sometimes I like to take just the edge of my finger, run it just on the very, very edge of the bottom there. And that's, again, we want to try and break the tension. We want this epoxy to roll all the way down and a little bit underneath, so when we're coming back with our stick, to chase those drips, we've already got that tension broken and it's flowing nice. All right.
All right.
And this is looking good here. It's nice and even. So, we'll take our double glove off. You don't have to do this. I just,
Does make your life easier.
way easier.
For sure.
I would definitely do it. You don't have to, but I would definitely do it, right? So we're going to treat this piece, we're going to do a marble interpretation, or excuse me, not a marble, a granite, or, well, yeah, we are going to do marble. Let's do some veining.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do is we're going to softly blend in some veins here. But first, we want to get some stuff out in the field. So like Troy showed you in the past, we're just going to get our main body of our color, which we're doing a light gray liquid this time, right? So we're just going to get some on our stick because we don't want a bunch of heavy stuff. All right, so we're just going to bring some stuff in here. And I know, again, you're thinking, man, that's a lot. Just trust the process, okay? We need to get it in here because we're going to come in here, we're going to mess this up, kind of bring it all together, get a flow with our hands, and we'll come back in and add some veining.
So you might see some of this is drips and some of it is what you might call strings coming off of the stick. All that's okay. You want a variation of both. You want some heavy spots and some light spots. This is going to set a nice undertone for the entire piece. So now the important part with what he's doing now is dig in. Don't be scared of it. Spread this product everywhere. And you want to be as random as you possibly can. You want to be short. You want to be long. You want to be in, out, moving away from yourself, toward yourself, everything. You want to get a little bit of this color everywhere. Sorry, Josh.
No, you're great. I love that. So what Troy's talking about is something we want to try and avoid, right? If you remember last time we did that kind of bolder color with the blue in here, and I showed you some areas that I wasn't real thrilled with. And that was because I took my hand and I just went straight across like that. And I made a streak, or even a wavy streak. That's not going to look natural. So we want to come in here. We're going to break it up. Some short ones, some long ones. We're going to pull them to us. We're going to take some away from us. Right? And then when this gets laid out, we hit this with the ISO afterwards, it's going to look like it belongs there. It's going to look like a natural piece of stone because it doesn't have all that linear movement. Right? So we're just going to keep working this in here with our hands. Right? Leaving some.
Hit you a little bit more down here towards this face.
Thank you, sir. So we're just going to keep on blending this in here. And we're still early enough in the process. If we're doing this and we say, man, you know, I dragged my hand in here a little bit more than I think I should, we got time. Get in there. And like Troy said, don't be scared of it. Dig in this, push your material around. Now that we've got a nice even coat, we want that flow. We want to break up that surface. We want to pull some to us, push some away from us. We want to get this all going. Again, though, when we're doing soft marbling, think about this as very similar to some of our other marble videos, right? We do have a flow. It's not exactly the same everywhere, but if you look, I'm kind of going this way with my piece, right? We want to keep that uniform in that regard. And the reason for that is if we have this all going one way, and then we all of a sudden cut a 90 right across the middle of this, it's not going to look like it belongs there. All right, so let me go around the other side here. And
so he's talking about flow, the flow of a piece. So the flow of a piece, you want everything to kind of move in a general direction. You don't want everything to be straight. You don't want everything to be perfectly perpendicular or parallel to each other. You just want a flow. If you look at stones in nature, they have a flow. Like this one, he's going to do at a slight angle just because they look nice that way. But almost every piece of marble that you look at, it has a flow to it. And that's what we're trying to create with these pieces is we just want these things to look as natural as possible. With my experience in this industry, when it comes to putting undertones into white especially, you cannot really overwork this product. You just keep playing with it, keep playing with it. The more you work it, really, truly, the better it usually looks, the more natural it's going to look. The more times your fingers run through it, it's going to look better and better and better. And don't be scared to use your fingertips. You can use the flat part of your hand or you can use your fingertips. Vary it up a little bit. Variations is what's going to help you make this thing look as natural as possible.
So before I get too deep into this, Chris will get in here a little bit tighter and kind of look at some of these areas. You might want to say to yourself, do I have enough here? Do I have enough there? I like how Troy added some over here where it got a little bit heavier, but I'm lacking quite a bit in that corner. So this is the time. We're still there. We can still add a little bit more if we'd like to, right?
Do you want more? I'm
going to go ahead and put just a little bit more in that corner.
Okay.
Get more of a heavier area. Yeah, that's looking good.
If you are helping somebody, let's say that you're a 2-man operation or a 2-woman operation, and you have one person leading a pour. If you're assisting them, you want to listen to them. You want to ask them questions. You don't want to just assume that because they have a vision in their head of what they're trying to create. So right there, I was drizzling a little bit of color in there for him, and he's got to communicate with me if he wants more, if he wants less, how he wants this thing to be, because he's the one with the vision on this piece. There has to be one person in charge of the pour.
Right, and so it was good for me to be able to talk with Troy. We work really good together, but he can't read my mind, and I don't expect him to, right? But I have an idea of what I want this to do. If I don't talk to him about that, I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to say, well, that's not what I wanted, right? Well, that ain't his fault. So now we've marbled that in a little bit better. All right, I'm liking that. Do one more quick grab on my faces around here. Still looking good. Just want to monitor that as we go. So we're going to start introducing some of our veins in here, right? And we've talked about this in different videos. Troy showed you different methods to do veining, right? I'm going to take these a little bit off of one of his cues, and we're going to use the stick to carve our veins out. And you could do this with the fingers like we did yesterday, or excuse me, on our last pour, where we marbled that blue in. We used our fingers, a lot of product, right? But I want these to be sharp and defined. You got to remember, if you want something to be pulled out more faded out, you're going to use your fingers. If you want them sharp, you want to use the stick, right? So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do one vein at a time because I want to make sure I like it, right? This is going to cut the piece in half almost, but you can see where my flow is going. So we're going to just go ahead and take something right along in there with it, all right? Some areas where it's thin, areas where it's thick, and we'll just come off the table with it, all right? I'm going to take this aside for just a second, and I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to look at this, decide if I like that vein, I like the flow of it, and then I'm going to get my stick going. Right, with our stick, we want to hold it so our stick's being touched and controlled with our finger, right? We're lightly moving it at an angle, a shallow angle, versus taking the stick and just digging it straight in. You can do it that way, but you're going to dig more of a trench in there versus being able to blend it out into your field, which is what we want to do, right? So, a couple ways to do this. We can come in here on the edge, but if you want a really cool effect, don't be scared, like Troy said, to come in here, come out in your field, pull some of this business up into your vein, right? We're going to move this all back out here. We're going to take some away from us, some of it towards us, right? So I like this area where we've got some thin and some thick veining going on. But again, don't be scared to come in there. We're not putting a lot of pressure on this stick at all. We don't need to. We just want to break this up a little bit, come in here, kind of introduce our base field area into our vein. I'm liking the way that's looking. All right, I'm going to pull some more out as we get into these thinner areas because I want these to fade just a little bit more.
I really want you guys at home to understand that when you're doing epoxy, you want to manipulate these colors until they look good to your eye. When they look good to your eye, move on, because you have the opportunity to come back once he finishes this vein. He's going to reassess if something has drawn up or it no longer looks good to his eye. He has a chance to correct it at that point. If you sit there in one spot and you keep manipulating one certain area, it's going to fade in, it's going to fade out, and it's just not going to look like it flows the way that it should. So as soon as it looks good to your eye, move on. You always have the opportunity to come back. So sorry to interject, but it was really good. Like the way he was talking about that is exactly right. When it looks good, move on. And he was also talking about bringing the color from the field into your vein. You're not just taking your vein color out. you're taking your field color in. When you work it both directions, you're going to create a much more natural looking piece. So I'm sorry to interrupt, Josh.
No,
you're doing great.
keep going. I love it.
Wanted to drive that message home.
So like Troy's talking about, we're going to pull some of our field color out of that area and bring it in, right? We're not scared to do that. Just kind of like think about when we're moving our fingers through this area, right? When we move our fingers through this area, we're grabbing product, we're moving it around. We're not worried that it's not going to turn out the way we want. We got to trust in the process, right? Remember, this box has got to flow still. It's not done moving. But if we don't introduce that color in there, it isn't going to crawl in there itself. With white, we've talked about if you overwork it, you can kind of turn it into mud, and we don't want to do that. So once you think you've got a good flow going, we can always come back and address an issue, right? But as we're moving along, we say, okay, that's looking pretty sharp. I can already tell you just from my eye, I'm going to come back and hit the center area a little bit, but that's not a right now, right? We want to keep moving this because I don't know how that's going to look in the next 5-10 minutes. But if I sit there and mess with it the whole time, I'm not going to get any idea of what's going on and be able to judge if I need to add or take away to it. So we're just going to keep on moving through here. And then once I get to the end of my piece on this vein, I'm going to stand back for a second and say, okay, what do I think about this? Well, I can tell you from my perspective, I really like how it goes from large to skinny. There's a break, but I don't like how fat this is, and I don't like how uniform that is going through there. I still got time. I can come back in here and fix that, right?
So explain to them how you're going to fix it. Like, what is it that you don't like about it?
So specifically, in this area right here where I'm working, I don't like that my gray is so blatant and sharp, right? It's just a big dollop. I don't want that. When I come back with my isopropyl to break all this up, it's not going to be able to break up such a huge area like that, right? So I need to help it out. I need to come out here. I need to use my stick. I need to manipulate. Again, we're going back and forth. We're going to bring things from our field and back out. And you may say to yourself, I don't know. This is looking like a chunk out here or not looking like a chunk out there. Or it doesn't look exactly marbled. Remember, that's not what this step is. We're trying to introduce our color throughout the piece, both in the field and in the vein area. If we worry about trying to make it exactly like a piece of stone, our first run through with a stick, we're going to waste so much time here that we won't be able to address anything else in the piece, right? So I'm okay with that. That's a lot better. It's moved a little bit more, right? I'm going to come in, this edge here is just a little too sharp for me. Just touch it just a little bit, but I like how there's a definite break there. Over here, this side's not bad. I feel like I pulled it out enough, but I think on this side, it's just running nice and straight on that side. I don't want to do that. So we're going to break that up. I'm not going to come and manipulate every section of this vein. I'm going to pick some places, I'm going to pull it out and push it in, right? Because that's how it's natural. Right, so here's an area I like. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to slowly pull this out, bring it out into my field.
So in our classes, we would consider, our terminology for that would be, we want to fade that out into the field. Okay, so whenever you're at home or you're making pieces or going to do your own countertop or your first couple of jobs, the most important thing you can do with epoxy is be loose, relax. If you're real rigid, things aren't going to turn out as good as they are if you have a nice fluid mobility to your hands. Your hands is really what makes or breaks this process and this technique. Josh is doing fantastic here. But right here, he did have a very defined edge to this vein, and now he's drug it out. And even though this doesn't look perfectly real at this point, he knows, because he's done this process several times now, that all he has to do is fade this out. And the isopropyl is really going to take over once he hits it, as long as he sprays it correctly. The isopropyl is going to make this look so much more natural than it does right now. He just knows that he needs a little bit of that color fading off into his field, and the isopropyl is going to do the rest. This is looking really good.
So again, we're not going to spend too much time on it. We want to make sure we like it. We want to say, okay, that's looking nice to my eye. I'm going to move forward, right? This is still a little heavy. I've got, if you can see in here, almost an abrupt line of white that rolls in there. So I'm going to come in my piece. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to break that up. We're going to fade this out, as Troy said. That's our terminology. We all want to be on the same page with what we're saying so we know how to talk to one another and it makes sense, right? So I'm going to break that line up, introduce that out into my field and fade it out correctly so that I get more dispersal of that color throughout the piece. Again, I'm trying to be careful not to overwork this because I don't want it to just turn into mud. But you'll see when I incorporate the isopropyl here in a little bit, this is going to sell out really, really nice. One little place I'm going to hit here on the edge real quick is just because it's gotten heavy. But again, like we talked about, we gave it time to look and fade or move on its own so we know where we want to address it, right? So I'm going to come in here, pull this out just a little bit. Now that I've finished this one, I like it. I still got time to move on and add some things if I'd like to. I'm going to watch it as I move though. I'm going to put some little veins in here, but the difference is I'm not going to pour anything out. I'm going to use the stick. I'm going to get a bead off the stick and I'm going to use that and blend it in, right? Something nice about natural stone that sometimes we overlook is the veins aren't always running from corner to corner or edge to edge. Some of them start right in the middle and stop right in the middle. Or they'll start on an edge and discontinue in the middle. You want to vary it up. You don't want to mirror anything. Right, that's part of it, but we also want to watch our flow. So I like an area right in here, as it's coming in through this area, right? So maybe I'll add something right up in this area. Kind of just follow it. So I'm just going to get a little on my stick. I'm going to come right in here and just carve something in there like that. Right. Let me set this down real quick. And then, just like we've done previously, I've got a lot of product still on this, but that's okay because I'm going to bleed this all out. I'm going to fade it out into my piece, right? And this is where you want to be really loose with your hand. You get too heavy-handed here, and we're just going to smear it. We want to be able to see this vein. We want to be able to see what we're putting out in this field. If we just grab a handful of product because we're so heavy-handed, we aren't going to have a vein, we're going to have a smudge. And I guess that could look all right if you're planning for it and it's part of your piece, but generally that's not what we want to do, right? So I'm just gently kind of moving that out. As you can see, I've got a big dollop there that fell off the tip of my stick when I was putting that in. Not a big deal. I'm just going to come in here. Just going to work it right in there. So we're going to add just another little piece here. I'm going to run this one off the edge and I might fork it just a little bit on this side, right? And then I'm going to leave it alone. I don't want to add too much in here because I like where it's at right now. So I'm going to get a little product on my stick, right? I'm going to take it, following the flow of where I'm at, right up in here. All right, like we talk about, we want to put a little extra product on our faces because we want that to run off the side there. It's really important. Right, and you can see that I added almost like an eye right there. I'm doing that on purpose. Excuse my shaky hands. That's what an energy drink will do for you right before you pour epoxy. Pro tip, don't do that. All right.
At least if you do, eat something.
So before we get back into that, I didn't show you that on my last frame, but what I want to show you is we need to wipe off the stick. All right. It's a lot easier to be light-handed when we come into our epoxy when we don't have a bunch of heavy product in there. That way we can just let it flow naturally, okay?
So that's a really big, important pro tip that he just gave you there, especially in white. Now, if you're doing this into black or a dark gray, anything in a darker color, you can get away with that. But with white, if you leave that pigmented epoxy on your stick and you start trying to manipulate, you're adding a lot more of that color into the white. And if you've done anything with white, or if you listen to whenever I do white demonstrations, is you have to be light-handed with white because it spreads a tremendous amount. So you want to really control, and the only way to control the amount that you have in there is once you apply, clean that stick, or even grab another clean stick. These things are cheap. Then start manipulating your veins. But carry on, Josh.
All right. And that's about all I'm going to do as far as additional veins. I think I like where we're at there. So we're going to add some more touches to this, but before we get in any deeper with that, we're going to give it a spray of isopropyl. So important tip when we're using our spray, these nozzles, for some reason, they do not stay the same every single time. You do a spray, you come back, this thing is going to shoot like a laser beam, or it's going to be a fine mist. Mess with this thing until you get it right where you want it. You got the time. See how it's just kind of spitting? I don't want that. Remember, we want big and little drops. So now I'm going to come back and I'm going to saturate my piece, not too much, but we want to give it a nice lather, right? We want big and little drops throughout the whole thing, just across the whole piece.
Perfect. You may not think it, you may not understand it until you start doing your own, but the way in which you spray that isopropyl is going to determine greatly how it affects your piece. The more variation you get in those drops from that sprayer, the more natural and variant everything becomes in your veining and your undertone marbleization, everything. It's super important.
So now that we've introduced our isopropyl in there, this is the time if we're going to add any pieces of kind of eye-popping touches in. The reason for that is we don't want to break up anything. So we're going to add a little gold and we're going to add a little sparkle in there. We want those to stay exactly where we put them. If we put them in there and let's say, hey, I'm going to shatter this and break it up and then add it afterwards, it's not going to look like it's supposed to be there. Gold, especially with this metallic gold spray paint, it will shatter and fracture and almost look like it's peppered in. That's definitely not what we want. We want to be able to see a defined line, right? So we're going to take a clean stick. I'm going to spray it, get it on there. All right, we don't want a ton, but we want enough that we can introduce, right? I think I'm going to come over on this little vein that I added here, and we're going to just follow it. We're not doing our own thing with it. We're following our flow of our piece, right? So I like this area here. I'm going to come in, just add enough. Right.
Like most things in white, less is more with this. You want to be thin, you want to be light-handed with this. You don't want to get too much on your stick. The gold and the silver look the best in thin, little, wispy veins. It looks really, really natural and really, really cool. So what do you do? What do you do if you had too much paint and you put it on and all of a sudden it balls up on itself and you got this big blob of gold or silver? Josh, you want to narrate on what they can do if that was to happen?
Well, here's a good example. There's a big blob right there. Troy's talking about having a nice wispy area. Try and put it in your piece. Try and make it blend and flow. So you see how I just pulled that out? Now it's got the field colors faded within it and it looks like it belongs there. Right? Remember, what we're always trying to do is get it to belong. It's not too heavy, it's not too light. And now it looks like it's supposed to be there, right?
I like it. Looks good. Looks real good.
We'll add maybe another little bit.
So Josh, do you only add gold to your veins or do you add it to the field too?
I add it to both places. In fact, sometimes it's nice to have it be its own thing, but again, we want it to follow the flow. So this is an area right here that doesn't have a whole lot going on. It's got some nice marbling. It's got some nice area that we've put in there beforehand where we saturate, or not saturate, we blended a little bit in there. So I'm just going to take this same thing. We're going to be light. I'm just going to add a little bit in there.
So Josh, how do you determine how much of this, how many spots of this you want to put into your piece? Is there a set amount you're supposed to put in?
I don't feel like there is. I feel like the way to do it is have a vision in your eye before you start your piece, and then as you come into it, you can add more as you go. But remember, this is just like anything else with white. A little bit goes a long way. We put too much in here, we can't get it out, and it's going to really ruin the flavor of what we got going on here. Right? I'm going to touch a couple more areas with our sparkle. This is the same concept, right? We do not want this sparkle shattered by the isopropyl. So we're going to come up in here after we've sprayed. That little vein of gold's looking beautiful right now. And we're just going to add the same thing. Just a line right in there. Because I want it to sit there. I want it to stay right where I'm putting it. And I'm not going to manipulate it too much. I want it to stay right there. I'm going to find maybe one or two good pieces to add that to here in this. Other parts of the field. Let's get after that area.
So Josh was talking a little bit about having a vision for your piece. But I'm going to kind of relate this to when I was teaching my son how to drive a manual transmission vehicle. Is you kind of have to let the epoxy talk to you and learn how to feel it, learn how to, kind of read what's going on inside of this piece. It's not robotic. There's no just set exact formula that I can give you to say, if you do this amount of sparkle in every single piece, it's going to look right. A lot of it depends on how much veining you have, how much undertone you have, you know, what kind of colors are going on inside of everything. You want to let the piece talk to you. If you're looking at it and it looks like it needs something else, put it in there. If you're looking at it and you're like, man, this thing is awesome, then it's probably time to quit. But let your piece talk to you. Let the epoxy talk to you. Learn how to feel it. Learn how to just flow with it. Okay? Josh, this is looking great. Keep going, my friend.
So I'm going to give my piece another once over, and I'm going to check and see if there's anything I don't like. If there's anything I don't like, just like Troy said, I'm going to get after it. The other things I'm going to look for is, most importantly, like we always talk about, I'm going to check my faces again. I'm going to look for dry spots. So I've got one right in here, right on the edge. We've talked about this a bunch of times. All we need to do is come in, just dab it to break the surface tension, get it out of there, right? We're not quite ready to torch just yet, but we're gonna, right? We're not worried too much about bubbles at this point because we're gonna hit those with the torch, but we're looking for any places where it's light, or we may have had, you know, a kamikaze fly in the middle of this. There's a million different things you gotta pay attention for. Faces are always going to be paramount to anything else. I'm looking for surface tension on these faces where it'll almost look like it tented around something. I'm not seeing a whole lot, maybe a little bit. But remember, if you do that, try and take some product from a reservoir where you have product that matches what you're doing, right? So this is all drips that came off of this. I'm going to take some from here, and we don't want to pull down with the material. We want to go up with it, and then we want to let it naturally flow down and take care of our issue. Right? So that's going to be taken care of right there. Now, let's see here. Let's take it in this big curve. Let's just follow the way that this comes over right here. We're just introducing it. Nice and light.
I like that a lot. And it's subtle. It doesn't have to be bold. It's subtle. You know, when you do highlights, you really don't want people that to be the first thing that they see. You want them to have to look for it a little bit. That's what makes it cool.
We'll just get a little bit more, but we're not going to put too much in this.
Yeah, you're going to like that one. It's a good spot for it. Very cool.
Just get a little bit more sparkle in this center area up by this gold.
And it doesn't have to always be together. If you're doing two highlight methods, some of them can be together, some of them can be separated. You can do it however you want to. There are no real rules. Now you might see he just touched the epoxy countertop with the base of his cup.
That's right.
That's okay. You know, we have a saying, and you've heard me say it plenty of times on these videos, you haven't screwed up till you give up. Just know that if you feel it touch the countertop with the base of the cup, now you've got epoxy on that cup. So now you want to make sure that you wipe that off, Josh, so where it doesn't drip out into your field. So just make sure that if it touches, wipe off the cup. That's going to keep you from having more problems come from it. And just look, did it mess anything up? If it did, just hit it with a stick or your finger and it'll be fine. That looks really good right there. That's a nice little focal point.
I think we're good.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now that he's done adding color, adding highlights, now what does our focus go to, Josh?
Well, we're going to look at deficits again, make sure we don't have any areas that we need to address. Faces, of course, we're going to keep saying that over and over and over. We're going to beat that horse till it's a stain. But we want to make dang sure of that. And then we're going to look back out in our field, see if maybe we missed like a big crater or fisheye from when we were spraying our isopropyl, see if we've got anything that fell in it. If we don't see anything, we like our piece where it's at, I think we're safe to hit it with a torch.
Okay. So we're kind of changing pace here at Counterintelligence on how we're doing these videos. I really like the idea of showing you all the growth process of somebody who's learning how to do this, because if you decide to become a dealer for Counterintelligence, this is the exact same process that you're going to go through whenever you come. So, you know, it's one thing when you see a guy that's been doing this for almost 20 years, as I have. Yeah, sure. You know, you say, well, you've been doing it forever. Of course you make it look easy, but you see here just how quickly he's he's grasped all of these concepts and how nice this piece looks. And it's going to continue to move. It's going to continue to even look a little bit more natural and a little bit more real. So Josh, go ahead, show him the technique with the torch. Talk to him about why you're doing what you're doing.
So again, we've talked about this a bunch of times. With the torch, we're going to go with the flow of our piece, right? Because why we're trying to do that is if we get any type of halo effect, we want it to look like it belongs and it's going that way. Also, it'll be something that's easier to address with maybe a little sand versus if we've got striations going perpendicular to our piece. So we're going to want to watch for any bubbles. We don't want to hit any area where we're sitting too long. We don't want to get too close. We're not looking to set this on fire. We're just letting all that air pop come out and maybe loosen the material up just a tad. We're not trying to take the technique that you can see on some videos where we're pushing our material with the torch. That can be done, but that's not this technique. So there was a big bubble right here. I don't know if you can see that, Chris, but it's already starting to fill in on its own. If you're concerned about it, we can still come back in here and dab it just a little bit with our finger. Come back in, hit it with the torch again real quick to loosen that up. Then it'll look like it was never there. Get on this other side and do the same thing.
This look like a real piece of stone. That corner up there is absolutely gorgeous. And every single one of these is going to be a little bit different. So don't try to mimic this exact same thing on your next one. Just let every piece be its own thing. Obviously, if you have a customer that says, I want this, you want to get it close, but you're never going to duplicate the exact same thing. So don't even really try. You know, you just want to get it in the same family. If they say, I like this amount of color, obviously you're going to have approximately this amount of color, but be careful. No two are ever going to be the same. So make sure when you're talking to your customer, if they are buying off of a sample, which is what I highly recommend when you come through training, is I want all of our customers to purchase from a sample. Pictures do not do this product justice, and pictures don't always transmit all the color. So you really want your customers picking from a sample board versus a picture or a photo that they've seen online or whatever else. You really want them to have a live sample. It's the exact same color. It's the exact same product. It's really going to help you out as a contractor throughout your career. It's going to keep you from having those customers that says, well, that's not what I ordered. If you made them a sample and you can lay it on top of the countertop that you just did and they look like they flow together, then you did your job. So that's just a little pro tip there. This looks absolutely fantastic, Josh. And keep in mind, Josh is going to get better and better and better and better. But this is absolutely 100% a sellable piece. I think a lot of people would really like this piece, but he's only going to continue to get better. So with that being said, he's probably going to torch this one more time. He gave it about 5 minutes after he does his initial torch. When you torch it, it's going to warm up that epoxy. So any air bubbles that are kind of trapped down a little further in the epoxy, it's going to allow them to rise to the surface. So I always like to give it a torch, wait about 5 minutes, let the epoxy cool down just a little bit, and give that air a little bit of time to reach the surface again. Josh, you got anything you want to add before we cut this one off?
No, I don't think so. I like the way this turned out. I like adding the gold in different places. I think it's important to remember that not every vein has to go straight through the piece. That's something I've been learning a lot.
Yep.
Real stone does not have every single line as a striation all the way from start to finish. So just remember that when you're putting those things in your piece.
Keeps everything from looking like a candy cane.
That's right.
So as always, I want to thank Josh, my cameraman Chris. Please like, subscribe, and share to our channel, and please engage us in the comment section. We would love to hear from you guys. What would you like to see us make? Challenge us. Put a picture in the comment section. Say, hey, can you make something that looks like this? I'd be happy to take that challenge. So as always, we'll see you on the next one.